Foster.
Larry Foster.
Larry Foster. So we're back. We're talking about Larry Foster now. But he was the 86 softy thrower. And
You know, it's so interesting because the 80, you look at all the popular putters today, and there are so many people who swear by whatever putter is their favorite, and they're all fairly similar, right? But the 86 softy, even at that time, was a completely different animal, and the people who loved it. That was what they putted with, and a lot of people did really well with it.
it's like butter. I mean, it's so smooth to throw, but in the wind, you just can't. The putting style has changed. I think people throw harder,
They do.
straighter,
They
flatter,
do. Yeah.
and they gun right at it.
Well, I tell you what, speaking of putters, my favorite putter was the original birdie mold, which was, completely blunt. It was, by today's standards, very deep.
Mm-hmm.
And I just loved it because it flew so straight. And
Alex
a lot of
Hughes.
people, what's that?
Alex Hughes. He
Alex
loves
Hughes,
that.
is that right?
Yeah, yeah. He
Yeah,
loves
a
the
lot of
birdie.
people didn't like the fact that it was so deep, and so they eventually, changed the mold and made it thinner. But I was very excited. I found a box in the back of the warehouse about 6, 8 months ago. My stash of 1992 world's biggest birdies, and
Nice.
I'm back in business. So
That's funny. I go to the shelf and I go, "Oh, there's a disc. There's that one," and you find a whole box full of. That's
yeah, well,
good.
I've been looking for them. I've been hoping to find them, and I was very happy when I did. I've been using them lately, and they still do what I need them to do. I don't need a lot of speed on my putt, and they're just so straight. I'm not a fan of the hard fade. So
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll see some company that we both know, and Chris, maybe we'll see somebody come out with something real similar to an
mm,
86 softy or something like that. That'd be
and
good.
yes, and you'll be sponsored. You can you can be
Call it
the first spokesman for the new version of it.
the 86 Hemi.
There
Hey,
you go.
hey, John, I wanted to ask you a question. You've been into so many states that you've already put golf courses in. Is there one that stands out that you would like to go to that you're kind of like, man, I'd really like to go to this state and put something in based upon either the players or obviously the land?
There certainly are. I will say, I think I can break a little news tonight. I've only done one little 9-hole course in Florida, and that was about 25 years ago. And next month we will be starting in Florida, first championship course in Florida. It's going to be at a former golf course. It's got amazing water features, even more so than Sela Ranch. I know that probably scares some people, but it's going to be great, and they'll have golf carts available. So we're excited about that. Now, the stereotype of Florida is that it's kind of flat, and right now that's the case on this property. But we're hoping to add some mountains and all that. So looking forward to that. But there are a lot of great disc golf states out there where I haven't worked yet, including Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and of course, who wouldn't love to someday have the chance to work in Hawaii? So that's we're looking forward to having that opportunity too. But and I'm sure I'm forgetting some. I mean, I know there's amazing property in Oregon and other states too. So, but I have to say, Wisconsin and Minnesota and Michigan are just tremendous states for disc golf. They have a lot of beautiful land, and so I hope someday be able to get up there. I hope someday be able to get everywhere. Now, I know there's a lot starting to happen in Alaska. It'd be great to to be able to do something up there. And
Yeah,
we
that's
don't
kind
wanna
of funny that you
exclude
brought
the-
up those 3 states, because those next to Texas, when I was doing a little research, per capita, they have the most disc golf courses per capita next to Texas. They're all up within the top 5 or 6. I know Texas is number 1, but Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin, it's amazing how many courses are up north. And we've got a friend who helped actually start our show, Matt Lang, who's up there in Michigan right now. Oh, he's in Wisconsin. But he
Yeah.
just raves about those courses up there. We've also got someone on the show, Christiani, who's always trying to get somebody down there in the Jamaica region. So not Jamaica, Brazil.
Brazil,
Sorry,
yeah.
Brazil.
Yeah.
She is from there, born and raised, and she's got connections down there. We had a gentleman on who is in Brazil at this time, who's I believe, a professional disc golfer who travels a little bit as well. But I know they're always trying to get something down there. I can only imagine what that experience would be like.
I would love to do that. You know, Dee and I had our honeymoon in Puerto Rico. There's a lot of beautiful land there, all through that part of the world. And you know, Europe, we're open. Just let us know. Would like to be able to get everywhere at some point. Just you know, the more the merrier. But I do have to say, Chris, since you mentioned per capita, I have many good friends in Iowa who reminded me very frequently that Iowa is also at or near the top of the list as far as per capita courses. And I will be actually going back to Cedar Rapids before the end of the year, my last trip to finish up the course at Shaver Park, which we're very much looking forward to. That's going to be a really good course, and the club there has just been amazing. So looking forward to my first championship course in Iowa.
Well, you got great land for it out there. That's my favorite. In all the Midwest places that I played, Des Moines, all those courses up there, Pickard, Ewing, was it Grandview? I think that was
Grandview, yeah.
which
Yeah, a lot
all of
great.
which I think you had something to do with, or at least consulted on. I know Juliana Corwood did Pickard with help. Isn't that how it went down?
I know, and I believe Juliana was the primary designer at Pickard initially. I can't swear to that, but that's my understanding. And as far as my involvement there, you know, we had the Pro-Am Worlds there way back when, and that year the PDGA sent me to look at all the courses, go over them with the local people. Last one that we did so impressed, you know, with the hills and the big trees and all the features. By the time we got to Pickard, I was okay, another big, really beautiful course.
Yeah, Chris,
Texas,
you don't know. You need to go there, and you need to play Pickard and Ewing back to back, and it's just majestic. I mean, there's no way to describe it other than that. It's
right, and all the Texas players who love to go over the top of everything. You need to spend some time in that part of the country because they don't. Those trees are a little too tall for that kind of approach to the game.
Yeah,
I
I'm
was
not one
gonna
of those
ask
who
you
go- I go
about.
through the
I was
middle.
gonna ask you about Rivery because you're talking about going over the top. I played a tournament there, and I was playing pretty well, and had hopes of winning. And I get there, and all the locals are just throwing thumbers, just popping down like that. And so I saw your name on that list, and I was like, what do you do to avoid that kind of stuff, the little local routes, I guess?
Well, I think two things. You know, that people use much at all when that course went in. I think some of the courses, including that one, have changed over time. They lose trees. I think that's one where some new construction came into the area, and so the local players redesigned some of the holes. But it's a good question, and it's one of the most important questions on a lot of properties in this part of the world, because there's a lot of courses where we don't have trees that are that tall, And you have to be very deliberate about where you put the tee to make sure that people just can't stand there and throw over the top of everything. Now there's, people like Simon who are going to do what they can do, and there's,
You can do it anyway.
sometimes not much you can do to stop. But the thing is, it's important to me to always work with incentives, right? You don't want to force somebody to do something all the time. But you want to, to me, it's better if you give them a reason to want to go that way. That's one of the issues I have with putting too much OB rope down everywhere. It's forcing people to do a particular thing, or mandatory is the same way. I think the game is a lot better when you give people incentives and you tempt them to take risks. And if they fail and they get a penalty or a harder shot or something, that's on them. But there are times, when, especially if you're trying to keep people from going over the top, you just have to be really careful with the tee box placement. And hopefully you give them a nice enough fairway to play that they're not just walking around frustrated that they can't throw their thumbers, right? They still should be able to enjoy the course.
Hey, I like
Yeah.
that thumber. Stay away from my thumber now. It's kind of funny. We had the very mild mannered Scott Stokely on the show one
Did
time.
you?
And I'm going to ask you a question about some of the things one of the things that he kind of pointed out. He's like, to be a good disc golfer, you need to be able to throw every shot. And I was wondering, as a course designer, do you often, or have you gone into designing a specific course where you're really trying to make sure that disc golfer has every shot in the bag, whether it might be a roller, might be a thumber, a grenade, it might be some, a pan shot, something that actually shows the skill level of disc golfer, other than just, stepping back and ripping a backhand and, S curving it around something?
That is an excellent question. And I have to say, a lot of where we are today, I think Scott Stokely was the one who started it. He was the one who really showed everybody the potential of the sidearm. And he was unusual at the time. And by the way, he won the national doubles championships 4 or 5 times with different partners. So I just happen to have a world doubles hat with me. This my wardrobe person gave me a lot of options in case the appropriate question came up. But he won, I think, 4 different times with 4 different partners, maybe even 5 times. And if I can take one little quick detour, something similar happened in the freestyle world, where in freestyle we typically compete in pairs or in threesomes. And I am actually the answer to a trivia question, because one of the greatest players of all time, Joey Houck, won the co-op, the 3-way world championships 4 years in a row, every year with 2 different partners. So I was one of those partners who were part of that incredible string of his. And so when Stokely did what he did, and I think that was still when we were back in Round Rock, I said, he's doing the same thing. He's like the Joey Houck of disc golf. So as far as your question, Chris, one of the things that's really important to me is to give people options. And I think, that's probably the primary way that I try to bring strategy and course management into the game. So, to have 2 or 3 or even sometimes 4 options off the tee, and then on par 4s, depending on where your shot lands, there may be 3 or 4 or more ways to get to the basket from there. So I count on, people's experience every time they play the course being different. And so they will have the opportunity to select different kinds of shots. And hopefully every time they play the course, it's a little different experience for them. And that's part of what keeps it interesting. At the same time, I think it's important to have holes where, you have to show us that you have this skill. And the easiest example of that is a straight tunnel shot. I still think, it's important for people to be able to show that they have that skill, which in some ways may be harder now than it ever used to be, right? Because how many discs will fly straight and finish straight, right? Everything, has a much bigger fade than it used to. So I do make sure that there are, a variety of right to left shots, a variety of left to right shots, different versions of straight shots. These days, we plan for more S shapes, or at least make them available to people. And sometimes, you put that over the top shot there as an option. I don't think I would ever make a hole where, that is the only way to play it. But certainly, there are times, and I'm expecting to do a lot of this in Florida, where we're on a flat property and it's more open, and it used to be a golf course, so rollers obviously are going to be tempting a lot of the time. So I think one of the challenges I'm looking forward to on this one is how do we make the air shot attractive, as opposed to the roller, because there's bound to be a lot of shots where the roller's, going to be something for people to look at. So I, while I don't plan for the player, that every hole is going to be this shot and then this shot and then this shot, I want to make everything available out there. And I hope that during their round, they'll be in enough different situations that they use it. And so, when I read a review of the course and somebody says I needed every shot in my bag, then I feel like, at least for that player, I probably got something right.
Yeah, because oftentimes I'll hear most of the players that I play with, they're like, I basically use the same 3 or 4 discs, which when you play with
Sure.
them, they're shooting about the same 3 or 4 shots as well, every single hole, and it becomes extremely repetitive. Whereas there's some courses down here where you get to see someone do some shot shaping, which to me is the impressive thing. It's like, and I'm gonna go into this out of here, but playing with Hemi sometimes, I mean, he can get in some tight spots, and being a lefty, shape a shot around a corner that is just, from that shot alone, it's a difficult shot to make. So it kind of, to me, that's kind of a more exciting part of golf than when I just keep going to the same course over and it's just the same 3 or 4 discs that people throw.
Right, exactly. And part of that is, a distance factor. And to me, that's one of the reasons I'm so big on par fours. I do believe in the classic ball golf approach on par threes, that pretty much everybody should be able to reach the par threes. And so par fours and par fives are when different distances start to come into play. So if somebody, you'll have a variety of driving distance off the tees on the par fours, and you'll have a variety of approach distances to the basket on par fours. And that's when I need to throw different discs comes into play. And hopefully, you have to think about whether you're throwing an 8-speed or a 12-speed off the tee, and then you have to think about, am I throwing a fairway driver or mid-range or sometimes a putter on the approach shot? And so that's part of why I spend so much time out there, is I want to make sure that every time somebody plays the course, as much as possible, it's going to be a different experience for them, so they don't get bored, and so they have a consistent level of challenge, but how they approach it and how they get rewarded and the different kind of looks they have on their approach shots will be different, just about every time. Don't want it to get boring.
So that's a great answer to your question, Chris. He pretty much pulls every bag or every disc out of your bag as you play, to make it interesting. Like, I think about courses that I'm interested in, like Northside Christian. There's a variety of discs, but I think for the most part, there's a lot of driver putter holes, in this area in general, and I think what you're talking about is like your leopards, your long rocks and stuff like that.
Right. And for that matter, I've always been a fan of shorter, trickier par threes where maybe the putter is a good option off the tee. That's a little harder to do these days because, if you go back 20 years, the distance difference between a putter and the longest driver was nowhere near the difference that we have today between a putter and the longest driver. So that makes it a little more challenging for the designer. But I think if you can make a good par three where a putter is a good option, that's still worth doing.
Mm-hmm. What is it? Do you think? What is it that makes throwing mid ranges to learn on? As a learning tool, and putters. What is it that makes that? Why does that make it all seem to work? Because people, I know they get out there with the big wings and stuff like that, and they can't throw it. They can't possibly make it fly straight. What is it about throwing a disc and shaping the shot that sets up for success for somebody learning to play disc golf?
Well, I mean, you've probably had this experience as much or more than I have. When you have somebody who's never played today, they can often throw a mid-range farther than they can throw a driver anyway. Until they learn to get the stroke to where they can take advantage of the extra speed of the driver, it's not doing them any good. And so I think if you can learn with something that's pretty neutral, you learn how to control the shot by controlling the angle. I think probably a lot of people today are, they go shopping, whether it's in person or online, and they get a whole bunch of different discs that they think are going to do a bunch of different things. But those discs aren't going to do what they expect them to do until they have a baseline of how you really need to throw. So I think if you start with something slower and more neutral and learn to throw a turnover shot, with actual turnover angle, and a hyzer with actual hyzer angle, and learn how to throw straight, then you can take some of these, different discs that are going to flip up or S back or whatever they're going to do, and you already are able to throw with a variety of different release angles, and now you can stick in those different discs and get different results out of them.
Yeah, I've got a little practice spot on hole 18, one of my courses, where it's almost, I don't know if you can see, it's almost like waist level to the soccer field, and there's a line all the way down the other side, about 250, maybe 300, and a little padded pole. And so I try to play a game and take every disc I have in my bag and try to make it go straight down that line. I'm not really too worried about hitting the pole or whatever. I'm thinking about that line. I think that's a pretty good exercise.
That sounds like a good exercise. Everybody should find themselves a field exactly like that, or they should come hang out with you for their practice round.
When I used to practice.
When you used to practice, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Bear Branch sets up well for that because we've got some soccer fields that are often side by side and back to back. So, you've got 400, 500, 600 feet to be able to throw with markers that give you an idea of how far you're going each time. And I really like that too, because that straight shot is probably the hardest shot, especially for the rec novice player, the ones who start. And so when they typically find holes such as Spring Valley number 2, which is just a tunnel shot with trees all the top of you, the canopy all the way around. So you can't go high, you can't go low, and you can't go right or left. You've got to go right down the middle. And it tends to get the most consternation from the new players, where they're like, I can't stand this hole. They get up on the tee box, and the first thing in their mind is, I hate this hole. And you see that repetitive conversation when you go to tournaments as well in that division, because then those seem to translate to anything that has to be a straight shot with a low ceiling. But it's a shot that you have to have in your bag in this game, especially if you want to win any tournaments.
It looks good too. It looks good on video. It looked good at the. I thought it looked good at the USDGC, the new hole 4. Did you happen to catch any of that, John? They've made this hole that's exactly what you're talking. It's like 280 maybe. You know, not
I haven't
240.
seen it yet. We had I was in Santa Barbara with the freestyle
Yeah,
club this weekend.
that's
So
right.
unfortunately, I missed it, but I know through the miracle of recorded video, we'll have the opportunity to look at it.
Well, and I wanted to talk to you about the rope too, because you talked about that earlier. Um, isn't that kind of what made the USDGC so, what it was? I mean, I know the course design had a lot to do with it, but the rope, and throughout the years, it's just been a menace. And as a player, I played it a few times, and it's like there's nothing else like it.
No, and that was the original idea, and I've always been a defender of that original concept. I think when it first started, Harold and to some extent Dave Dunapace was involved in that, and that's part of why it's called the U.S. Championships, because their concept was to make something that was analogous to the U.S. Open in golf, which is known as having the most demanding fairways and really being something different from what people play all year. And their answer to that was to put rope everywhere, and that was something new at the time. And I said, look, that's what this event is about, and that's okay. I think what happened was people saw that and said, oh, hey, there's an idea. And they just started applying it everywhere. Sometimes, let me choose my words carefully. Sometimes because they would look at a hole and say, well, this hole isn't hard enough. And rather than spending time to try to find a way to reconfigure it and maybe make it more challenging without OB, they just said, well, let's put down rope and that'll make it harder, and we're good to go. So I think, in its place, it was fine. I think, I mean, honestly, I think that's not the direction that disc golf needs to go. I think we've gone pretty far down that road, and we don't need to. And so, my courses, that are in my resume so far, and the ones I'll be working on in the future, my goal will be to make it challenging and enjoyable without having to put down a lot of rope.
Mm-hmm. I noticed this year they, or maybe it was in previous years and I didn't notice, but they used to have a yellow poles, and then they had a rope. I think it was yellow, and then they had the string. So it was like one unit. So that was for the, visually where you could see it was the OB. Well, they did away with the yellow poles and they added these rocks. And so, and then they mowed strategically, so you could see. So it was kind of different for me to see that. And the rock came into play when Katrina was on hole 9, and she had a perfect eagle opportunity coming in, and she hits one of those rocks, and the wheel, and she had a 7-stroke lead at the time, final round, everything, the wheels were falling off, and she lost all the strokes back.
Wow.
Pretty much right after that, it just kind of happened. I was thinking, USDGC is always causing some kind of controversy, but it's good for the game. We played through it. We lived through the handicap tournament year. What happened there? Do you have any insights on that, Chris? They had a year where they made it a handicap tournament, so they have the best championship in the world, and then all of a sudden it's a handicap tournament. I didn't really understand why.
I don't really have any more information on that than you probably do. I do think that at this point they've kind of taken it upon themselves to be an innovator, and I haven't talked to them about it, but they seem to maybe feel some pressure to keep trying new things, and I think you know, with mixed reviews,
Mhm.
but you know, it's good. It's good to try things. Maybe sometimes it's not good to try things for the first time at one of the biggest tournaments in the world. But you know, you have to give them credit for their successes, and you have to give them credit for you know, what they're willing to try.
Yeah, the little hit and miss. See, we had that at Worlds this year. I played for the old people Worlds and junior Worlds when we went up to Peoria this year, and one of the courses was Northwood Black and Blue. Obviously, that's just all tight, wooded, beautiful course that you expect coming from a world championship. But the second course we played was Sunset Hills, which was a glorified golf course with manufactured OBs and no shade and long walks in between holes. And it was just, to me, was the least pleasurable round that I think I could have played, because it was kind of funny. The people from Florida loved it. They thought, this is, I just love this. This is awesome. And, you know, of course, on my card, I had people from Canada and Michigan and Wisconsin. They're over there going hemming and hawing. I mean, all we're doing is the same throw back, you know, just rip back and throw it as far as you can and just stay from OB. And then, of course, when we get inside the woods, the guy from Florida, he happened to be on our card again. And we had two of them on there that time. And they were just hemming and hawing. Oh, I can't stand all these woods and trees. And all I keep doing is hitting the trees. It's like, well, yeah, you're just not used to just ripping everything as far as you can, you know, because if you land 15 feet left or right when you rip it on a golf course, it doesn't matter. But when you try to rip it and you go 15 feet left or right inside the woods, it's a big difference. So I found that Sunset Hills wasn't very, it did not really add to my excitement of a major like that. It was not the course that I was expecting. I was, to be honest with you, and I'm not one to say much about stuff like that, but I was quite disappointed in that course. I just was just like, you know, I've got to walk 400 to 500 feet between my next hole. So I'm walking
Right.
in between holes to get to that hole, and it ended up being like a 4.5 hour round. Just,
Wow.
I just
Well, you
didn't really
know,
care for that.
I think one of the things that's going on now is we're entering a new era where there are enough courses and enough incentives to build great courses, because there's, you know, there's a lot of venues that want to be part of the tour, world championships, whatever it may be, that, you know, we've always kind of had to take what was available. And we're entering into an era now where there's going to be a lot more great courses to choose from. And so what you're talking about, Chris, I think is, you know, there are people who have more appreciation for more open courses. There are people who have more appreciation for tighter courses. And sometimes I think we're in a little danger of kind of saying, well, there's two or three different types of courses and we should have them all. For example, you know, the Champions Cup was at W.R. Jackson this year, which, you know, was my original design at the International Disc Golf Center. And some people are saying, well, that'll be the wooded major. And, you know, maybe this other course is the open golf course major, and this one is the rope, you know,
No.
predominantly rope major, that kind of thing. We're going to wind up like tennis, right? Where there's a
No, we
grass
can't do
major
that.
and a clay major. And
Grass,
so
clay, hard court.
Yeah.
exactly,
Sober,
exactly.
stoned.
Well,
Oh, wait.
yeah. Yeah, different types of handicaps. Is that what you're saying, Dave? So I
Oh man, come on, come on. Hopefully this
tighter
is me.
and more open. You don't want to get, what's that?
Nothing. Go ahead. Sorry.
As you know, you want to have moderately open. You don't want to get too open. You want to get at least moderately wooded. You don't want to get too wooded. I mean, there are courses out there that go a little too far with the tight gaps. I think, you know, and I'm pretty sure we've got some projects coming up. They're not in stone yet, so I can't really talk about them. But we're going to have some opportunities to do courses that are some in the woods and some a little more open. I don't ever want to do wide open, but if you have a few holes where people can really let loose. Of course, I think if you're in the woods, you want to have holes where people can, they're not going to throw maybe 600 feet, but they can throw, 450, 500 feet in the woods. And if they have that option, it's important to give them. So to me, the ideal course of the future is going to have a mix of everything as much as possible. And when you're playing a tournament that has multiple courses, it's good for the courses to have different character. Sounds like, at least for your tastes, one course might have gone a little too far, and for your friend from Florida, Northwoods Black went a little too far in the other direction. But if we can, find a middle ground, and why can't we all get along, right? And give people the variety more variety in the experience is usually a good thing. And I will say, because there are probably people listening who go, "Oh, long walks, that's like John Houck's thing." There are there are courses of mine where to get from the tee to the basket is a little bit of a hike, but hopefully when you get there, it's worth it. And I would rather not use this 400 feet, because there's no way to put a really good hole there. And if you make that walk and you get the wow factor and it's ultimately worth it, then I'm okay with that. And I've got courses going back 25, 30 years probably where people had that comment about it. So.
Hey, if you're on a cart, it's no big deal.
Right.
Like
And if you're,
Chris and I played Lago Vista in Austin. Have you played that one? And you have to rent the cart there, but they drive you to every vista on that whole, and there, how it is out there. It's beautiful, like rolling hills. And that cart will take you right to the top of the hill, and that's the tee pad right there off of the path.
Yeah, yes, it is. I have been out there and it is beautiful. And I will say, this is something else that is in our future, because there are more golf venues or former golf venues where cart rental is a form of income. And so on the one hand, we've always said it's a walking game, it's exercise, and on the other hand, people love carts. So there's a little tension there that I think we'll be dealing with more in the future.
I follow a DIY carts site on Facebook, homemade carts, because I used to have one. Actually, I had 3. But there's a lot of electric stuff seeping in, and more cart stuff like that could, the possibilities are pretty cool. Really, it doesn't have to be a big old tank of a cart like in golf. It could be a little scooter kind of thing.
Right, and they have those little surfboard things that I guess people use on golf courses now. So
yeah,
probably wouldn't work on most disc golf courses. But,
yeah, it depends on where you're at. In my area, we'd do it all over the place down here.
True enough.
There's only a couple that you couldn't, like Lily, Tat, some things like that. There's some places you can't go, but for the most part, what I think Hemi was saying earlier too, we are kind of lucky, because what I like about some of the courses that really challenge me, I find that it not forces me to, but it gives me a better idea to throw one shot like 3 or 4 or 5 times, where I might find myself flicking 3 or 4 or 5 times, and then the next, then the 6th hole is all of a sudden, oh my goodness, it's time for me to throw a backhand, and I may have to, throw one 353 for me, which is far, versus my normal 275. So it takes me on my rhythm, where I've been flicking, then all of a sudden it's like, what, this is a backhand hole, and then I find myself kind of stressed out about that hole, because I haven't thrown backhand 5 holes. I haven't even tried that shot. So I kind of often like courses like that, because it does put that stress that, okay, now it's time, and you haven't shot it in a while, but it's time now, and you got to do it.
Yeah, it forces
That's
you.
interesting. Yeah, rhythm is an element of the course that I'm really getting more and more interested in. How from hole to hole and in sections of holes, and do you start kind of easy and work your way up and then back down a little bit and then make it a little harder again. And in some ways it does become like a piece of music, where you plan on where the crescendo is going to be, and how strong is the finish, how hard do you come out at the very beginning. And it's one of the real subtleties. And again, we've spent decades having to kind of just deal with what we're given, and now we're having more opportunities with bigger properties, more opportunities to shape the land and that kind of thing. So that's a really interesting point, Chris, and I think that's something that's going to become more a part of design in the future too.
Yeah, I love those short little danger holes kind of right in the middle of the round, like you're about 7th or your 11th or 12th hole, and they'll have something that's maybe 110, 150 feet, but there's every trap and there's every tree, but there's that opportunity for you to put it right next to the basket or in the basket as well. But what it does is it makes you slow down and basically say, okay, there's no walk up on this. I've got to now plant my feet on the box. I'm not going to go through any walk up whatsoever. So I'm just going to plant and throw, which oftentimes breaks that rhythm of being on the box, taking a full walk up, being able to do it backhand or forehand. And sometimes those kind of shots too, you're kind of just sitting there going, oh my goodness, I'm about to have to thread a needle and it's not very far. And it's going to have to go either really right very fast or really left very fast. Those kinds of things. I think that kind of gets the excitement in too, because then it's also an opportunity for me and the people I'm playing against to gain a stroke. Because then I'm like, you know what, he could hit the tree and go way over there. And once he does, it's just and it doesn't always take that 350, that 380, and it just gives a little excitement to it. So just things that I kind of see that I enjoy in courses that are especially around here, because I'll think of Bear Branch number, what is that, Hemi 7, that one that you stand in, it's probably 140. I'm talking about a Bear Branch.
Yeah. 7,
I think it's
and there's
7.
also 10.
And that's right before, and the one right before that is the longest drive you're going to throw, right? So it's the longest hole in the course where you rip back and go as far as you can. And then the next hole is basically a standstill 140-foot shot. So I kind of like it where it kind of just changes you. It's like, okay, beforehand you just ripped it, and now you got to go in between the trees. So tangent, sorry.
No, not at all. And I think there are holes too, typically in the second half of the course, where they make a big impact on you, and you're trying not to think about them 6 holes ahead of time because they're coming. And you're like, okay, I just got to focus. I just got to focus on where I am. It's like, okay, I'm coming. You're getting closer. It's going to have to happen. And yeah, those kind of holes that kind of get in your head and build that anticipation. And it's not always a negative kind of anticipation. Sometimes it's that's the hole you're really looking forward to playing, and that's the view you're really looking forward to seeing. And building that anticipation is it can be an important psychological part of the experience.
Oh yeah, I love that. Spring Valley used to kill me on 17 and 18. I was like, God, I got it. Before it started.
What's funny
out,
is
and now the trees.
I was thinking when John was talking about 10 holes popped into my head.
They're just some that you're like, oh man,
Yeah.
it's the last one, and
Nemesis.
you're tired, right? You're kind of tired. You're mentally a little bit tired. You kind of focused a lot, and then all of a sudden it comes down to the last 6 shots. The next thing you know, instead of 6, it's 8, and you're like, why did I just end my round like that? Why? What was that all about? Why did I just do that? It should have been a 6 at minimum. Should have maybe been a 5. On both holes to go together, when you're finishing it out. And instead you got 8 strokes and you just put up, 2 bogeys back to back. It just kind of makes you go off the round, which is always funny. I used to cook at Spring Valley. And so when people would walk up the hill, it was always amazing. I found out that no matter what, no matter if a guy shot 11 down, it was always, oh, I could have done better. Oh, I missed this shot. It's never, I've seen people shoot 14, 15 down. It's always like, man, I should have had. I'm like, the success, it's like they don't want to take the success or accept that success. They always remember those few shots that maybe just, I'm not saying it was a failure, but it just didn't go their way. But those are the ones they remember.
That reminds me of Nolan Grider's comment when he shot at 18 down. They said, what happened there? And he goes, how'd you do that? Whatever. He's like, I missed that putt on hole 15. That's all he was thinking about,
Yeah.
Shoots at
No,
18 down.
right. Who has come off around and thought, I made every putt, I nailed every drive, and yet we still, hey, how'd your round go? Well, it's close, should have got this and I should have got that. So yeah, it's a little half full, half empty, I guess. But I think the point is most of us at the end of a round tend to look at the half empty part, right?
It's funny. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Excellent. Well, I had one more question that I wanted to, it's always bugged me, and I thought you might could shed some light on it.
We're finally going to see if we can get to the bottom of it after
It's
all
not-
these years.
It's not anything big. It's just like I have this, Chris knows me. I've always had this kind of, not hatred, but just like, I don't understand worlds. I don't understand playing 20 different courses in 10 days. It's not that, but it just seems like to me, like, especially back in the old days, why did we have to put so many courses out there? Why couldn't we just play one track? It seems like everybody wants in on, having their course. Is it because of the sheer numbers of people?
Well, at some level, yeah. I mean, if you want to let in that many people, you have to have a place to put them. So that requires more courses. I think one of the things that's been going on, because you don't see that at Worlds anymore, right? I think 2017, when I think that was the first year that Pro World broke off from Master World, and it was just 2 courses, right? We did W.R. Jackson and Fort Gordon that year, and I mean, the only reason I remember that year is because I was so involved in it. But I think at the pro level, there's always been a tension between, we love being able to experience more courses and we hate having to practice more courses, because we want to play the best we can. And the traditional model for Pro Worlds was always 4 courses, as I recall. So when we did Pro Worlds in Port Arthur 94, 95, we had 4 courses. And I think, pretty much all the ones leading up to it and subsequent years, that was the model. So, but when you want to accommodate more people, more courses is the only way. So now you have the tension between, do we want to cut down on the number of courses, or do we want to let in more people? And I think part of what's happened is, each division, right, only plays, you guys would know better than I, especially because Chris was just there, 4 courses at Worlds.
Chris would know, yeah.
No, we only played 2. We played we played Blue, and then we played Sunset, and we just we went back and forth between them.
Played them each twice. Okay.
Yep.
So yeah, but those are all the factors. Number of people, being able to get in the practice rounds. People who tour now get to play all the courses they want. That didn't used to be the case. So it was a big deal to be able to go somewhere and play 4 different courses. So there's also some preferences in some places for having, longer and shorter courses. Maybe have a course that's, par in the mid to high 60s, and having courses where par is under 60. I think when we were in Port Arthur in the mid 90s, there was always still, the feeling that we should have one course that's a little more old school, and par would be, somewhere between 54 and 58, because, that was the kind of course that we had all grown up playing, and that was still in its own right a different test And it's almost like saying, well, we should have a couple of dead straight holes on every course. We should have one pretty much par three course out of every mix. And I've heard at least one pro in the last few years saying, yeah, we should start playing more courses that have lower par because it's a different challenge. So
I love it. I love it as a spectator because I've been watching a lot of the tour this year. In fact, probably every bit of it. I'll turn it on, I'll watch, and it's cool to see that balance between two courses. I can't think of specifically which tournament I'm talking about, but there was one where they went golf course. I think that may have been Emporia, but wooded, and then even like the one James Cameron went on, that was a that was a frisbee course, pretty much where you're shaping shots, throwing straight lines.
well, and in New Hampshire, right? Brewster's Ridge and Fox Run.
Fox Run, yeah.
That's so those are I know players love having those two courses and the different challenges on those. So, and again, we haven't had a lot of options traditionally, right? I mean, you could have the best courses in the world, but you don't have the sponsors and the staff, you're not getting the world championships. And you have the money and the staff, and maybe your courses aren't that great, but you get the bid. And now across the board, it's going to be better courses, better facilities, bigger sponsors. And so I think that's going to be one of the challenges of the tour is, how do you pick these courses when hopefully you have good options? And I certainly hope that what we're working on these days will give them some good options, because we've got some cities that see what's going on and say, we want to be part of that. We want to be on the tour. And so it's, more competition in that case leads to better courses, bigger purses, and, everything that goes along with it.
Hey,
Well,
John.
as a fan, I've got to say it's been pretty good. I think they're doing a good job with it. I think they're heading in the right direction. There've been hiccups along the way, but just as a spectator, I'm loving what I'm seeing. I think they're doing a good job.
No, I'm with you. It gets better and better, and I think they took a huge leap forward this year, especially in the video coverage. So yeah, Jeff Spring doing a tremendous job, and all the people who are there, and of course all the people in the individual cities too. So
that's an important job. I'm glad you said his name, Jeff Spring. I've been seeing him doing awards and stuff, but to be able to manufacture a vibe, basically that's what you're doing when you pick a course or you pick a set of a club or however that comes about. Is basically creating an atmosphere and doing a good job of it.
Doing a fantastic job.
Hey, John, before we let you go, I do have a question too. And I don't even know if I want to open this can up, but since Sammy talked about his kind of things that he doesn't care about, sometimes playing so many courses, from somebody who designed so many courses and someone who sets the par level and the expectation of what that course is supposed to be shot at, I find that and you tell me what you think about it. Why is it that the course designer is not able to set what the rating of that course would be? And why? And do you think that it should fluctuate, that the rating of your course being shot from one player to the other has such drastic differences? And I say this to say that even in ball golf, they don't have a rating that you get after you shoot a round. Tiger Woods doesn't go out there and all of a sudden he shoots 7 down at the Masters and they go, oh, well, Tiger shot 1,020 round a day. They don't say that. They say Tiger Woods shot 7 down. And as the designer of the course, I would almost be incumbent upon, especially someone with your stature and knowledge about the game itself, to be able to go, hey, man, okay, well, if you want to rate my course and you want us to come over here and you want to shoot an 8 down, then an 8 down is rated 980. And if you want to shoot a 12 down, then it's 1040. but the fluctuation between one rated round, between what day somebody shoots and what day somebody doesn't shoot it, it doesn't make much sense to me. And the reason why I say that is that I've played the same course 2 days, same weather. I'm the same human being, same placements, same everything. And one day my rating was 890. I shot 4 strokes better the next day, and it was 850. Shooting 4 strokes better. And of course, I know I know how they do it. I know how it's all mathematically done because it's based upon who's playing that day and yada, yada, yada. But I just think the simplified should be that the course designer should be able to go, hey, you come to my course and you shoot a 15 down, that's a 1090. I've designed this course that if you shoot that hands down, I don't care if you're a rec player. I don't care if you're a junior player. That's what it should be. But I just find it so confusing that I could shoot the same round that somebody else shoots and it'd be so differently rated.
Well, your experience is, I would hope, very unusual. I've never heard of that before. Shooting better in similar circumstances, and your ratings going down. I would, if you haven't already, I would maybe send a letter to somebody who works with the ratings.
It was because the pros that day, the next day, did not shoot as well, and they showed it to me. They go, okay, well, the best pro that day shot worse. So his score gets wiped out, yada, yada, yada. So he's not a calculator to your propagator, and your propagator to your calculator, and yada, yada, yada. I'm like, well, that just makes no sense to me because somebody else played poorly. I played better, and I get docked for it. He's a better player than you are. So his propagating number calculates yours to a calculus. I'm just like, oh my goodness gracious.
Well,
with the incentive of me shooting better, there's no incentive of me going out there and going, oh my goodness, I shot 4 strokes better. I'm expecting a 910, 920. And next thing you know, I got an 860, 850. And I'm like, I'm missing something.
There's a lot of issues there. And I think probably really what happened is you shot 810 the first day and 850 the second day. So you should be glad that they gave you the higher rating the first day. Yeah. Who knows? Listen, there's a number of factors here. I've never really been involved in the ratings. I don't really think consciously about the ratings when I'm designing, but I will say this: when I design the blue tees, and the blue tees are for we say 950 average, so 925 to 975 players. That's who the blue tees are for. And on virtually all of my championship courses, they all have a blue configuration, and that's what that is aimed at. And so I'm happy to say that typically when I see a big tournament at one of my courses, the par from the blue tees is usually very close to 950. So that's as far as it's validation to me that I matched that configuration with that skill level. Now, obviously, there are other skill levels, and one of the challenges is how do you accommodate the 1,000+ rated players? And so, course like Harmony Bends, for example, we have a set of gold pins, and I think usually the par on the gold configuration comes out to be a little over 1,000, and that's pretty much where we want it to be. So, the ratings, it's a player rating, right? Not a course rating. So my concern is that I set par correctly. And if I get the distances and the challenge right, then when you play that course, your rating will be about what it's supposed to be. Now, as far as why we have that and Tiger Woods doesn't, it's because after 400 years, golf courses are all similar enough that a 7 under here is pretty much a 7 under here. whereas a 7 under at Northwoods Black is a, 70 under somewhere else, right? And I think that's something that we should cherish about our sport, that we come from that kind of variety. And even though the top courses are becoming more similar to each other, they're not as similar as it is in the golf world. And at this point, I think that's a good thing, that gives us more different experiences on different courses. So since our courses are so different, and to have a handicap like golf does, right? I'm a 3 handicap, I'm a 12 handicap. That doesn't really make sense because our courses are so different. There are some people who have done a good job, with a handicap system that can work that out. But the ratings is the best way that we have for people to get some kind of number that gives a reflection of how you did, and gives a reflection of how you did, compared to other people playing other courses, right? If you want to compare yourself to the people playing the same course, that's what your score is for. And of course, as always, with any version of golf, it's you against the course. And you gotta be comfortable with how you did. And if the ratings are helpful and do good for people, then we can be happy for that. But at some point, look, because I've had people who'd say, "No, I felt like I shot a great round, but my rating didn't show it." Or what you don't want to hear is, "I felt like I played great, but I didn't get a great score." Right? That's where my job comes in. All right. I need to make sure that I designed holes that tell us who's playing better that day. All right. There's a lot of old school holes where everybody gets a 3. The guy who made a great drive and missed his putt from 50 got a 3, and the guy who threw it, 300 feet, 45 degrees the wrong direction, still was able to lay up and get a 3. So they got the same score, but one of them clearly played better than the other, and that hole didn't do the job. So I sympathize with your plight. It sounds very strange, but A, blame the propagators, and B, take it up with the ratings guys. If it happens on a course that I designed, and that kind of thing, the numbers aren't making sense, then by all means let me know, and I'll see what I can do.
Yeah, I'd like to have it simplified, just to know that if I walked up to a course and shot 10 down, then that's what that rating on a course would be. I
Well,
find
that's
that playing against somebody else's rating that's in novice or a different
Sure, and
division, I'm kind of like, I just want to know if I walk on that course and I shoot lights out and I shoot a 12 down, if my 12 down is Paul McBeth's 12 down, it should be the same 12 down. That's all I'm saying. I understand what you're saying. And the reality is I personally couldn't care less about ratings. I don't play for it that way. But now with the disc golf community, the way it's changing, and now these kids coming up are being paid solely based upon their rating, right? So, if you're not 1,010 or 1,040, some of these companies, they're basing how much money they're going to give you based upon your rating, right? So therein lies my small issue about it. For me personally, I couldn't care less. But for those that we interview quite often who are young and getting up in this business, and they're being affected by it. And I know that we also find that quite often inside some of the ladies' game, because their propagators are the guys. So it affects their rating. And so they can't get to that 1,000 rating. And, you keep putting those one behind the other when you're not getting 1,000, and you can't get to it now because now you put so many tournaments behind you in the bag that just overcome those 970s, 980s that you thought were maybe a 1020, 1030. You're not being able to get that, which is in turn not allowing you to sign a contract with some of these major manufacturers who are out there saying, hey, if you're not 1040, we're not going to give you X amount of dollars. So I understand what you're saying, but in the end, it does affect people's money.
Well, that's true, and I, I hear you. I think two things. One, imagine how hard it is to come up with a mathematical system that can compare your 12 to Paul's 12 and everything else that he's done, everything else that you've done, but more so your 12 on this course versus his 12 on another course, and all the hundreds of courses in between. And this person has only played these 6 courses in Wisconsin, and you've played these 20 courses in Texas, and a few, and you're playing different courses in different conditions, and to come up with some kind of system where we can compare each other. And that's very difficult, and I have sympathy for the people who do that. But the other thing, when it comes to sponsorships, don't forget there are players out there who get sponsorships that are much greater than their rating or their success might indicate, because they have such a social media presence,
Oh, for sure.
right?
Oh,
And
for
they
sure.
bring so many eyeballs to their sponsor, and they have a good reputation that will reflect well on that sponsor. And the sponsors always have the option to say, we're going to pay you based on results, right? We pay you if you win, or if you come in second, or you come in third, or we pay you if you get 10,000 views, or 10,000 Instagram hits, or whatever it might be. So there's a lot of factors in there. But
For sure.
anyway, it's all complicated, and as long as we're all doing our best, that's all we can ask for. Now, if there are people who are trying to game the system somehow, we should keep an eye on them. But as long as we're giving a sincere effort, we're all in this thing together. It's all changing so fast, and bottom line, as you said, we can ignore it all and just enjoy playing the game, and that's what it comes down to.
Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure.
Well,
Well,
I
Paul, I
think
have nothing
I
else
think
tonight.
the
I'm gonna let Hemi wrap this up. But thank you so much for joining this evening. I know we could go on for hours. So many questions, but hopefully we'll get to do this again later in the future. And I'm gonna let Hemi wrap that up. But thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Well, thank you, Chris. It's great to be with you guys. I'm honored to be on a second time, and I'd be happy to do it in the future sometime. I want to thank you both very much. I want to thank all the players and viewers out there, and your sponsors for making it possible. Not just on this show, but to do everything that we do. We're so blessed to be able to enjoy this game, and to be able to work in this business. And of course, most of all, I need to thank Dee, because none of what we do would happen without her. She's doing so many amazing things in this industry, and I didn't have 7 courses in the top 100 before I met her. So there's a stat that gives some indication of what she's been able to do. And again, if anybody's interested in the course design conference in Austin in mid-November, the 3 disc golf conference, safer, smarter, and more sustainable. We got a lot of great speakers, and you can find the information on Facebook, or email us. And we've got some great people coming down, and I look forward to seeing everybody there. And David Hemmeline, I mean, it's especially since we know Chris has the edit button. I will go ahead and say we are recording this on a Friday night, and Sunday is the Bills at Kansas City. So we're looking forward to that.
it's looking good. I'll be watching. Hey, John, thanks for the insights. I mean, the whole player rating thing. I had one thing to say before about the player rating thing. As much as we hate it, or talk or do our thing with the player rating, you watch in a tournament and it seems to work. The ones that are supposed to win, that are at this rating, they tend to win. And it tends to, you could probably do some kind of scientific formula on it. But as I played tournaments, Nate Doss would have a bad round or whatever, and I'm like, okay, there he is back here. And then by the end of the tournament, he won it. this was a glass blown one year. It tends to work. That's the thing. But thanks for the insight on, the courses being so different and that being a special part of our sport. That stood out in my mind as a just something I'll take with me. You changed my views on a lot of things tonight. Worlds, format, all that stuff, player rating. Thanks. Blown my mind.
Well, my pleasure. And just on that topic again, let me put it a little different way. If you travel to play ball golf, you're going to a course you've never seen before, before you get out there that the par is going to be, probably somewhere between 68 and 72. And that there's going to be so many par threes and so many par fours and so many par fives. The fairways are all going to be more or less this width, and that the threes and fours and fives are going to be more or less this distance. And if you are going to a disc golf course you've never been to before, you have no idea what to expect, right? Unless you've watched the video or something. You could be in North Carolina throwing through 5-foot gaps. You could be at Round Rock where it's, windy, or old Round Rock where it's windy and wide open, and everything in between. So, as I said, there are things we need to do to make sure all our courses get better and at least, reach these minimum quality levels. But at this point, I do think it's a good thing that we have that much variety. It's just, it's like meeting new people, right? They're all different. They all have their own personalities, and courses.
It's like
the same way.
The diversity that it is in the sport. We have a lot of diversity within the courses and with the people, and so I think it's in good hands. I think thanks to people like you going out there and putting quality courses that make you want to come play again. To me, that's the sign of a good course. If it has your number, if it calls you, hey, right, let's come play. It's time to play.
You want this again? Come on back.
Yeah.
I
agree that definitely did that for me. I was looking down the list. Oh my God. I mean, all of them. Starting with Zilker, Marymore, Seawright, Wimberley. Man, I could go on. But anyway, thanks for everything you've done, John. Thanks for taking the time. And say hi to D for us.
I will do that. Thank you, my friends. Appreciate it.
All right. Maybe we'll see you in November.
That'd be great.
Yeah. I have to save my money.
Save your money. Come on back.
All right. Love you, John.
All right. Love you guys too. Thanks so
much.
Peace.
As we like to say before we end the show, go play disc golf, throw something in the air. We'll see y'all next time. Thank you, John. Thank you, Hemi. Thank y'all so much. Thank you for everybody watching. Good night.